Welcome to the Art Studio Insights podcast, where we demystify the creative process and exchange ideas with career-minded artists. We are your hosts, Adriana May and
Jackie Sanders. We are two emerging artists sharing for the advice and business lessons we have learned along our journey. So if you are not already, please go ahead and subscribe. This will help other creatives like you find our podcast, and you'll be notified when we drop a new episode every Tuesday. Today's episode, we're talking about artist stereotypes. But first, Adriana, what have you been up to this week?
So I took a quick vacation, just a nice short one, in which I had a few days off of social media, not going into the studio, and also trying roller skating after more than 10 years. No falls yet, knock on wood, but
you just jinxed yourself, so
I fully expect it to be real. Like, let's just be real. But I don't know. It's one of those things where we're so go, 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 all the business systems in place and whatnot. And like in my case, I work for myself. Honestly, sometimes I forget to take vacations or days off.
Yeah, it's so hard.
Yeah, so it was good to just kind of take a little bit of a break from that. How about you, Jackie?
Yeah, so my weekend was kind of similar. Our studios were closed to the public this week, so I really used the time to really make my own schedule. Normally I like to be there when we have open hours, but I really spent a lot of the time in the studio making my own schedules. So I made a lot of progress with a big mural project that I've been working on. It's a 3-foot by 4-foot panel that we've talked about on the podcast before. So really laying the foundation for that was a huge undertaking this weekend. So it feels good to really have progress be made on that. But it is definitely emphasizing how small my studio is starting to feel, juggling so many projects at one time. I have like staining of wood on one table and my computer out for admin work on another. And then this huge panel right in the middle of the floor that I'm leaping over constantly. So it's probably good that we were not open to the public this weekend, because it was all hands on deck chaos in there. I don't think I could have fit even a second person in there. Anytime someone would walk by, I'd be like, let's just talk in the hallway, because there's no room in my studio. But I feel like that's definitely where last week's episode has come in handy in terms of being organized, being as efficient with the space as possible, because especially when you're juggling multiple projects, it can become a lot sometimes. Yeah. And I feel like it's so funny because a lot of the time when people think of artists or any type of creative, they just associate it with being super unorganized and dysfunctional in their space and scattered, when realistically, a lot of us are super organized because we have to be. We have to be creative and efficient with our space and our time, which ties in perfectly to artist stereotypes that we hear all the time and are almost like actively debunking. So on today's episode, we're going to be talking about our top 8 artist stereotypes. So Adriana, what is the first one that we have on our list?
Okay, so this is definitely going to be a fun episode. The first one, or one of the ones that I've heard before, is, oh, but you look like a normal person. Like, I didn't expect this. Like, I thought artists were colorful clothes and tie-dyed and paint splattered paint and things. And, let's be real. Can it happen? Sure. But you'd be surprised, not only when it comes to clothes, but also like having organized spaces. A lot of us tend to be a little bit more on the type A side of things. So we're just going to look pretty normal. Like, we're hiding in plain sight. Like, I would like someday I'll be brave enough. And when somebody says that, I'm just going to just joke back and say, yeah, the French berets in my back pocket. Like, what do you expect? I'm carrying an easel.
Yeah, I feel like people have that. Yeah. Yeah, maybe one day. And yeah, I feel like especially, I mean, I'm a huge athlete. If anyone knows me in real life or has come to the studio, I'm literally in workout clothes 80% of the time. And so a lot of workouts clothes lately, especially the trend, is just solid colors, a lot of neutrals, just like navy and gray, maybe some white occasionally, but it's really no funky patterns, nothing wild. And I kind of justify or think about it as like, I want my artwork to make this statement. I don't want my presence to make this statement. So when it comes to clothes, it's like my creative output is already spent on my artwork. I can't think about clothing decisions. So definitely when it comes to how we dress, that's a stereotype that I feel like is used a lot. But another comment that I feel like people, their first impression, they don't mean anything negative by it, but saying, oh, you're an artist, that's more of like a hobby, right? Like, what do you actually do? And I know people just say that because there is that stereotype of you can't make a living off of your artwork. All artists are like starving artists. And realistically, like that is not the case. I currently am working towards becoming a full-time artist. Do I have a day job? Yes. Am I proud that I'm able to juggle my creative business and my day job? Yes. But long term, I am building up the business structure to be able to do this full time, have my art business, and still be able to do other projects, other marketing projects on the side if I want. But the long-term focus is my art business and art career. So I know people don't mean anything negative by it when they say it's just a hobby, but I think that is a clear distinction with a lot of artists of making art for fun and enjoying the process and finding value in that, which is amazing, versus other artists who are career-minded artists.
Yeah, I mean, and that's basically like us, right? And
Right.
there's many more of us out there than some folks may realize. But essentially, like for me, right, when I hear this question, I'm like, well, being an artist is my full-time job, right? And it
Yeah.
just means that besides painting, it's also running a small business. So I have to deal with taxes and accounting and marketing and social media and inventory and customer service.
Yep.
And the list goes on, right? This is how I pay my share of the bills. So some people choose to work for another business or be a barista, like work at a Starbucks, right?
Yeah.
Or work in an office. I choose to make my living with art. Like that is a choice, right? That is
Yeah.
a career path that is available. And I will say, at one point, art was my hobby. Like it is for a lot of people out there. And there's
Yeah.
absolutely nothing wrong with that. But it does come to a point where you have to decide, are you committed enough to take that, take the necessary steps so that you can level up and be
Mhm.
able to turn it into a full-fledged business. Like, is it possible? Yes, it is. So anyways, that's always a fun one to navigate when people are like thinking, oh, but there's no way you could make money with this, right? And it's like, actually you can.
Yeah, definitely. And I think the big thing that comes with that is having the education around it and really just being strategic with how you spend your time and what you're doing as a small business in order to pivot away from being a hobby into being a small business.
Yeah, yeah. And that kind of ties in with another comment slash question, right, that I've heard before is that as an artist, you paint all day, right? Like you probably just have fun standing at the easel, splashing paint without a
Yep,
care
just
in the
all
world.
day. That's all we
Oh, it
do.
should. But that you have such an easy job, like so
Yep.
relaxed, so chill.
Must be so nice.
It must. Oh! I heard it. I've heard it
This
phrased
must be
exactly
nice.
like that. Oh, it must. Oh, you're an artist. Oh, that must be nice. You know. Do you have
You're
someone
like,
that pays all your bills for you? I mean, it's just like, oh my god, it kind of ties in, right?
right.
And it's one of those things where it's like, well, being a painter, being an artist, being a creative, right? It's great. It's super rewarding. It does come with a lot of highs and lows that have to be navigated. There
Mhm.
is no sure paycheck like there would be in other jobs. Um,
True.
but I'm also a small business owner, right? With all the challenges that comes with. And that does come with time constraints. So some days there's no more than an hour to paint, if that. So it's not just about splashing paint all day. It's kind of like, we mentioned with the previous stereotype comment slash question. There's a lot of other things that we have to do. It's not just paint.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's the one thing that especially I mean, I came from the academia art background, and yeah, they touched on this, but I felt like this was one of those big things that as I graduated and moved out and started pursuing art as an art career, this was that big distinction that I felt like I was needing more education on, was really that entrepreneurial mindset, because you do have to balance all of these things. You have to you have to balance, like you were saying, like business strategy, sales structure, marketing, networking with other artists and galleries, filling out exhibition applications, all of these very admin, business, finance things that they don't cover in art school. You might have a lesson on it, or at best, maybe a section or a class on it, but that's so much of the art business career, which you have to kind of take ownership and take control over how you're spending your time and when you're getting all of these things done, which I feel like takes us perfectly to the stereotype number 4, which, oh, you're an artist. Does this just mean that you're a total night owl? You probably just paint into the night and you're probably up all night, sleeping in until noon, right? Which is super funny for anyone who especially knows me, because I feel like both of us, Adriana and I, are both total morning people. I basically have a hard, fast rule. I can't do anything productive past 9 p.m., which directly conflicts with this stereotype. I get my best work done from like 6 a.m. to noon. After that, it's like, I'm done for the day. Like, I definitely am a morning creative energy person.
Yeah, and on mine, I'm like, well, I wouldn't say I'm a morning person per se. I've definitely turned into one over time. And I'm usually up around 7 a.m. I don't know, for whatever reason, I generally paint usually while there's light out. Even though I don't
Yeah.
necessarily use light in my painting. I don't know. It's almost like a cycle, or maybe a psychological thing, right? It just feels like more energizing. I also know that if I stay up too late, or I don't, sleep enough, it actually negatively affects my painting output. Like, it takes me time to recover. It's a matter of finding that balance that works for your schedule, right?
Right, exactly. And especially, I think that makes sense because like you are full-time artists. So just like other people would commute to work, they work 9 to 5 or 8 to 6 or whatever their hours are. That's your schedule, just going into the studio, which is funny because you really do train yourself to create those habits and systems and figure out where you work best. Where like, it's impossible for me to have good creative energy right now during the day, because for me during the day, it's like, oh, I'm day job mode. Versus I love the morning energy before anyone else is awake. So when it's dark, I'm like there for it. But then day job, I'm like, oh, I have to go to my day job. But obviously you were there too. And so you train yourself to use the time that you have and eventually get to the point where that is your creative time.
Yeah. And you bring up a good point, because I think it's probably, or part of the reason I started morphing into the morning part was when I had a day job and I had to wake up earlier so that I could paint before going to work, and just kind of set the tone that way. But I do actually know artists that stay up late at night. So can't debunk this one 100%. I do know artists that will start at 10 p.m. and don't stop till like 3 a.m. To each their own, of course. Some of us are morning people. And wake up early and are even creating, at crack of dawn, right? Another artist stereotype that probably everybody has heard at this point is the whole tortured artist trope, right? Oh, but you seem so cheerful. I thought, artists are supposed to be tortured to make their best work, blah, blah, blah. Okay, that one I'm just like, seriously, honestly, yes, I know. And you hear, you read history books and there were all these folks with issues. Let's just leave it at that, right? Throughout history.
Complex situations.
I love that. Complex situations throughout history. And they're now famous, and now everybody knows what happened, what their little secrets were or little issues were. But let's just put it this way. A lot of us, we don't have time for that tortured artist drama. we're here to make the best work that we can. We're very much into spreading positivity, and being in a community of fellow artists and sharing, and, nobody has time for that.
Yeah, exactly. And honestly, I'm a firm believer, because I have learned this the hard way too, of just not taking care of my body and my health from a nutrition standpoint and from a fitness standpoint, where I hit like a total burnout a few years ago. And so I am a huge proponent of, like, the healthier you are, the more creative you can be, which completely goes against the whole tortured artist. You need to be like in your lowest low in order to create, where if I'm even the slightest bit low, I'm like, I'm not creating. This is terrible energy. I don't want this. So really, like, needing to prioritize taking care of yourself. And then, yeah, like you were saying, really lifting each other up as artists, not having to play this huge competition game, really prioritizing community over competition, and connecting with other artists, sharing info and ideas and tips and tools with each other, because having that positive, productive, and supportive energy is a total game changer when it comes to the creative process. And number 6 on the list of artist stereotypes, we have the ultimate technology comment. We've touched on this on other podcast episodes, but people saying, like, I didn't think that artists were really into technology and computers. I thought you guys were just sketching and painting and drawing, which again is super funny, because both of us use technology so much in our creative process. I mean, 5, 6 years ago, heck, even 8 years ago at this point, I started apprenticing with a professor of mine when I was in college. And I was trained in a creative practice using a CO2 laser, using design software to make graphics, and then producing them using this machinery and technology, later incorporating UV printers and all these different things that are very computer technology heavy, but it's still fine art.
Yeah, and it's really funny too. It's like just about anybody that knows me in my previous corporate life or current knows I'm a nerd. And I say that in the best of ways. Like, I love technology. I love spreadsheets. I have built websites. I've assembled whole computers from scratch. I
Yeah.
used to work at the Geek Squad at some point. I mean,
I've definitely benefited from that.
yes, you have. And other artists here have too. And
Yeah.
it is totally fine. Where they're like, can you come over? I can't connect my printer
Yeah.
to my iPad and there's an error. And I'm like, yep, hold on.
Don't worry, I
need
got
to troubleshoot it. Well, whether it takes me 5 minutes or an hour, I'll figure it out somehow.
Yeah. Our personal technology service. It's great.
I don't know about that, but I
For
would say, like,
compensation.
I have loved using technology for the longest time. And for me, it is complementary to my art process. I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
Procreate, Fresco, Photoshop, like, honestly, it doesn't matter what it is. I'm like, I am a huge, huge fan of it. I mean, we even have a whole episode on technology in the art making process. We're kind of
Yeah.
like, it's to us, it's just completely tied in. To survive as a small business owner, if you're a career-minded artist, right? Then
Exactly.
you're definitely going to be interfacing with technology in some way, shape, or form. Another artist stereotype that we've heard is, I'm going to buy this painting from you, right, for $100, because one day when you are famous and you sell paintings for millions of dollars, this little painting I got from you when you were starting out, it'll be worth a fortune. Okay, hear me out.
Yeah, sounds great.
Yeah, that would be great news for the both of us. And honestly, I hope we will both be alive to enjoy it. So can I have a piece of that commission, please? Thanks.
Right, exactly. And I think that's a thing. I mean, a lot of people say that when they're trying to be like loving and supportive, and some people do invest in art for long-term profit, just like any other investment. But a lot of active working artists like ourselves, like, we create work hoping that it just connects with other people. We want other people to have meaningful experiences with it. Hopefully it'll tell a story or share an idea. And it's just something different than cookie cutter mass produced work that some people may buy just to fill the walls in their house. I mean, yes, you can find some great Target finds or things at Home Goods, but there's really nothing like having an original piece of artwork where you've met the artist, you know the story behind why that piece was made and their larger influences. And yes, in 50 years, when paintings are selling for millions of dollars, it'll be a win-win. So I'm okay with having this artist stereotype, honestly, because it's a very positive, optimistic way of thinking. So
Yeah,
I'm all about that.
better worth more than less. Hey.
Right, exactly. And again, I think when people are saying that, it's coming from a very loving and supportive place, which I think another comment that we get a lot, which is our final artist stereotype number 8, is, oh, well, I'm just not a very creative person. You're so lucky that you've been born with it. Which, again, when people say this, like, I don't think they mean anything bad by it. But it really is a skill that, yes, you can have initial attraction towards it when you're younger and you see a kid draw a perfect circle and they're this young prodigy. Clearly, they're gifted like every kid. But I think it does kind of negate the fact of, just like any other profession, you are having to constantly refine your skills. You are constantly having to learn and innovate and be that lifelong learner, just like with continuing education courses in any other career. Like, I went to art school, got my undergrad and my master's, and I'm still learning new things constantly, especially, like I was saying, on the business side of it. Like, that's a side of the professional art world that you aren't taught in every single art program. So, like, I really saw that huge gap. And even after 4 years of being in college, I was like, this is not enough time to learn everything that I need to learn. So, yes, people are trying to be supportive and saying, like, you're very talented, but it kind of can come off sometimes as negating all of the hard, constant work that you are doing to refine your craft.
Yeah, and the way I see it, there's always this debate about nature versus nurture.
Yeah.
And I mean, putting that aside, to me, being an artist is definitely more about dedication and hard work.
Yeah.
No practice and no obstacles to overcome. That, I mean, to me, that means there's no growth. There's nowhere else to
Right.
go. I've spent hundreds of hours and invested a small fortune on my art education,
Oh, yeah.
but showing up to the easel consistently, that's where I learn the most. And
Mhm.
there's also the bit about showing your work and getting constructive feedback and how that can help you level up. It is so important to leverage the artistic community around you. Just saying, oh, I'm
Oh,
not
yeah.
artistic, or I'm not creative. Well, but do you want to be? Are you
Right.
willing to do what it takes to get to the level, to bridge the gap between where you are and where you want to go? And then if on top of that, right, you want to actually make a career out of it, there's a few extra steps to go beyond even just learning the craft. So it's not so much were you born with it. I don't think anybody was born with, knowledge on how to run a small business.
No.
And you can have the greatest talent in the world, but if you don't put it out there, you don't know how to share it and sell it and just, bring it to the most people and connect with people, well, it's kind of wasted.
Right, exactly. And I think you make a good point too of, like, are you willing to do the work that it takes? Because it is possible. Like, doing what you love full time is possible if you are willing to put the work in.
Yeah, and there are honestly so many roads that can lead to success, however you define that, happiness, however that feels right for you in a creative career, right?
Right.
And visually art isn't exactly quote unquote easy job. With a
Mhm.
preset career path, like now you go to school, now you go to this internship, now you go to this other job, and then now you level, like kind of like get
Go up
promoted
the ladder.
or not, or yeah, exactly. Like it's not a preset career path, but honestly, while this can be really challenging, and it is at times, and full of uncertainty, it's also incredibly liberating and
Hmm.
rewarding and empowering. Like you are in charge, you are driving that
Yeah.
boat, like that car.
Yeah, it is so empowering. And honestly, I know that both of us have found such an amazing, supportive, creative community, which has truly been huge for our creative growth, both from the artwork standpoint, but especially the art business standpoint. So we will obviously continue to be sharing on this podcast, demystifying the creative process and talking with other career minded artists that we have met along our journey. But realistically, this podcast is only a one-way street. We love sharing with you guys, but we really wanted to put our heads together to figure out a way that we can create a more interactive community, where we can share resources and ideas and experiences and just go into more detail serving our fellow artists on their creative journeys.
As a result of putting our heads together, we decided to come up with this monthly membership that will help you transform your art business and help you level up through access to a community of goal driven creatives. Really good advice from industry professionals and course modules that cover a little bit of everything from social media to technology to sustainable studio practices.
Yeah, and I am super excited because inside the Level Up Artist membership, we're going to focus on that stuff that really matters, like the practical education, honest advice, and the resources that you really need to level up your creative practice while still staying true to the artist you want to be.
Yeah, and a part of the cool thing about this is we're going to be learning alongside you. So even though Jackie and I are going to be the ones facilitating the group, this is going to be a community where we can all share with each other and grow together.
Yeah, and we're just super, super excited for this new community platform and really the opportunity to build deeper connections with you guys and fellow career minded artists. So the doors will officially be open next week on June 29th, and it'll be open for 2 weeks, closing midnight on Tuesday, July 13th. So head on over to levelupartist.com to sign up for our waiting list, and we will share more details about memberships and the Level Up Artist community in next week's episode.
All right, so that's a wrap on today's conversation, and we hope you enjoyed this episode.
As always, both of our blogs will be linked in the show notes where you can find episode notes, resources, and links to everything we mentioned in today's episode.
If you want to stay connected with us in between episodes and share what you have learned, you can follow us on social media. I'm at Amate Art on all platforms.
And I'm J Sanders Studio across all platforms. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll talk to you next week.